what are you most excited about in Lucee 6?
That it's here. Well,
yes,
it took us really 3 long years, and we announced it actually at CFCamp 2019. And we even had a logo, we had all the features, we had everything. And then, okay, I have the greatest excuse ever, COVID hit, so there goes. No, that slowed us a little down, and finally, we were able to release the release candidate yesterday. And the final release will come out after, I suppose, next week. Just right.
ColdFusion Alive, the podcast for the ColdFusion community. Discover practices, tools, techniques, tips and trends for modern ColdFusion development. Brought to you by TerraTech, the ColdFusion experts. Develop, secure, optimize. Here is your host, the founder of TerraTech, Michaela Light.
Welcome to the podcast. We're coming here live from CFCamp in Munich, Germany, and we are going to be talking about Lucee 6, the new release of Lucee CFML, and we've got some amazing experts here. We've got Mark Drew, who's done a lot of Lucee coding at DistroKid. And we've got Charlie Arehart, the ColdFusion troubleshooting expert, who's giving an independent view on Lucee. Then we've got Ben Nadel, all the way from New York City. And he's the top blogger among ColdFusion people, according to our annual survey. And then we've got Gert Franz from the Lucee Association, Switzerland, coming up at the end, but not least. And in the other screen, if you're watching on video, we have some of the attendees from CFCamp, and we'll be opening the set. Yay! Go attendees! And we'll be opening up to audience questions later in the show. So why don't we just start by just going through each of the 4 panelists? And I just want to ask you, what are you most excited about in Lucee 6?
That it's here. Well,
yes,
it took us really 3 long years, and we announced it actually at CFCamp 2019. And we even had a logo, we had all the features, we had everything. And then, okay, I have the greatest excuse ever, COVID hit, so there goes. No, that slowed us a little down, and finally, we were able to release the release candidate yesterday. And the final release will come out after, I suppose, next week. Just right before Misha goes on holiday, he's going to go, okay, this is live. I'm out of here, right? So please comment to Zac, right? And so that is really my highlight of it. I have lots of different highlights, which I can talk to about later on as well. But anyway, passing on.
What about you, Ben? What are you most excited about in the Lucee 6 release?
I think the Java integration looks super exciting. For me, so much of what makes Lucee so fun to work with is breaking down the barriers between the ColdFusion code and other code, whether it's very simple things like you don't have to expand paths to read files in, you can just do relative file paths, or creating components by passing in jar libraries, tag islands for easy CF query stuff. Obviously, I mean, that's a given. So the Java stuff has always been a huge black box that I've never really been able to break into. So I'm super excited to be able to now start to dribble in some Java code and interact with external Java libraries in much more advanced ways than just instantiating stuff. So that to me is super exciting.
Yeah.
How about you, Charlie?
There you go. I didn't want to give you that chance. So first, I'm the answer to a question. That's rare. I'm the answer to a question. Which one of these does not belong?
Yes.
You're talking about Lucee, and you're thinking, Charlie, go ahead.
You could do the Jeopardy quiz on Lucee, Charlie.
That's right. And I can't help but wanting to point out that, CF 2021 did add CF Java. You can do Java within CFML already in CF. Just got to point that out. But, it's got to point that out. Got to represent. But no, but there are awesome things coming in Lucee 6. And the thing I love, I think the most, although I'm sure I'll love more as we learn more, there's so little time. You guys were dancing to get through that keynote, but the listeners are awesome. And not just for query listening, which somebody might go, I don't know if I'll use that, but the mail listener, just thinking of all the things you could do to be able to capture before and after events. That's just amazing. And it is, sad that Adobe may or may not bother to implement such a thing. And I'll just say the thing that I got out of this morning is I think it's like, screw it. We're just going to do what we're going to do. We're going to make it great. And it's going to serve our audience. And if that doesn't suit everybody, oh, well, we're going to do what we want to do. And, Zac made that point many times. If there's something you want done, let us know. We want to make your development experience better. And that's just an awesome message. And, not only the Lucee audience should gravitate to that, but I'm sure many in the CF community that are itching to see things improved, they're just going to maybe say, you know what, I'm tired of waiting for it to come. So I think it's very interesting times. So yeah, good stuff to see.
Mark, Drew, what are you excited about in this release?
Well, I wear a different hat, not metaphorically rather than actually. I think the thing that most excites me is like CF config as a configuration, the basic configuration for Lucee and the single server, like the fact that you have to be container friendly, like Kubernetes friendly, that cloud friendly. This is the way things are now. This is not like, the future. This is like the past. There's new things coming up in the future. And it's taken a while for us to get really friendly with being able to do very quick startup times, warming up at build time so that we can really do massively scalable applications. And that's what I'm really excited about. Well,
can you just translate very quickly into seconds?
Sorry, translate the sentence.
No, very quickly. You said it.
Oh, no, there's... Well, the fact that it will start up in seconds and configured, so we can start it up, warm it up, and get it all like into a container ready to go, and that you can start up in a couple of seconds and be a ready application ready to go. I actually wanted to fill into that. I actually installed Lucee 6, shame on me, last week for the first time. We have been busy. Yes, I'm sorry. You're going to hate me and everything. But I knew everything about it, but I wanted it to be somewhat stable before I actually put my hands on it. Yeah, so I have to be honest there. I had a glass of wine, so anyway. And I was very, very happily astonished that it starts under a second, right? And
wow.
That is the promise that we made 4 years ago. Let's aim for a second or less. Mm-hmm. And if you run it in the single configuration mode, that is where you don't have a server and a web admin. So we're going back to the Adobe roots, right? So we're going to one administrator only. So you don't have a web and a server context, just a regular context. Then it starts in 900. Sorry?
It's going forwards, my friend.
Oh, forwards. Yes. I'm sorry about that. So that's my first highlight. So that starts within sub-second. And the other one is .cfs files.
Oh my God, about time.
Yes, about time. It's just like a component where you can write CF script from the beginning. And now CFS files are supported, which are allowing you to write just pure CF script, CFML templates.
That only excites.
Hang on. So there was a question from the audience. What about thread debugging? There was a question from the audience. What about thread debugging? Well, thread debugging, I have to remind that I have installed it last week, so I have no clue. I know that thread debugging is something that I always wished for. And I think the debugger, if I'm not wrong, is now showing you the output of everything that happens inside of a CF thread. That correct? Whew. Okay, thank God. But anyway, that was what I wished for a couple of years ago.
So just clarify for the audience at home, if you've got multiple threads, which most CF applications do running, you can debug into one of them or several.
Just one thing, the audience can always ask questions. So if you want to ask us anything, just raise your hand and then go ahead.
Well, and let's get the microphone to the questioner too, if that's possible. Before we go to audience questions, I'd love to do that next. I just wanted to get your quick reactions on how CFCamp is, because not everyone listening has been to CFCamp. Maybe they need to hear what it's actually like. And we've got 3 Americans here and 1 European, so maybe you have a slightly different viewpoint. Mark, what?
I am British.
British, sorry. We've got British, Americans, and Europeans, or you're a British European or something.
Mark, you want to share something? Well, you're not European anymore. Oh,
okay. Well, geographically, we still are. We weren't able to exactly launch Britain across the Atlantic Ocean, as much as some people wish to. Then, but to talk about CFCamp is a very good vibe after 4 years. I've missed a lot of faces that I don't get to see, and to talk to a lot of really wonderful people. And it's been some great talks so far. Well, let's keep it going next year. Yes, Michi? Next year? Yes. Yeah.
How about you, Charlie? Is this your first CFCamp, or you've been?
No, it's not my first. No, I've been to several. And one of the great things about CFCamp is right there.
Ooh, Belgian beer.
Good German beer. Absolutely good German beer. German beer, absolutely. Or wine, or water.
Seltzer.
Mitgas. Right? Mitgas.
Mitgas means sparkling water, and in Berlin it's called still or loud. So quiet or loud.
How about you, Ben? I think this is your first CFCamp, am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. This is my first CFCamp.
We tried about 15 years. Okay, CFCamp is not that old, but we tried for 5, 6, 7, 8 years to get him over, and he never made it. But now, finally,
yay!
Well, tell us, Ben, what finally got you to come, and what do you think of it?
I was nervous. I was nervous coming here. I haven't been around people in a really long time.
come on,
that's true. Very small. I have a lot of social anxiety. I have a lot of travel anxiety. So I feel very out of practice. I didn't know if I could make small talk anymore. And y'all have been super, super wonderful and welcoming. And it's been really a pleasure. I've been just having a wonderful, wonderful time. And
there you go.
So much for having me.
There you go.
Awesome. Very happy with it.
And what's your CFCamp experience, Gert, this year?
What I like very much is the passion. You know, we have made it through rough times. I've said that in the keynote this morning, and it was not easy for many of us. And but what I still see is everyone here has so much passion about their job, about their work, about CFML, whether it's Adobe or Lucee. It doesn't really matter. They really love their job. They love working on it, and they love committing, even if it's just correcting my third language weird German.
That's showing off now.
Whatever.
Oh, it's only my third language.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, but you know, actually, just a side story. Today we were playing around with ChatGPT. And we wanted to translate the administrator to Klingon. But apparently the repository for Klingon wasn't big enough for ChatGPT. So we used something else like Vietnamese, and we'll see.
Wow.
Anyway,
cool stuff.
It's really cool, and I love the energy.
Yes. Excellent. Why don't we see if anyone has questions in the audience at CFCamp, and maybe Michi can get a microphone to them, or...
This podcast is brought to you by TerraTech, the ColdFusion experts. Develop, secure, optimize. Get detailed show notes on today's episode and your free CF Alive Modern ColdFusion Guide at terratech.com. That is TERATECH.com. And now back to today's show.
By the way, you can
I
ask
have some questions
anything.
too.
Whatever. You know, not only CFML related, you know, any question.
Okay.
Well, they're a bit shy right now, but maybe they need a few moments to think about it. Meanwhile, I'm going to ask what happened to the JSON configuration in Lucee 6. It seems to have changed quite a lot.
Yeah. So I'm going to say some of the stuff that we've implemented before, and it's not going to be specific to Lucee 6. So I'm going to be looking at Zac, who's like on the front page, and he's going to nod or shake his head if I'm wrong. So one of the things that we really wanted to do was be able to configure Lucee really easily, right? And one of the things that we've had for many years is the Lucee server.xml and Lucee web.xml.cfm for some weird reason. That is a full XML file. And XML, we all know, is very old. It's crap. It's terrible. It's not very readable. I mean, yeah, sure, it's possible by the machine, but it has, it has comments, which is true. But one of the nice things is that you're now able to have a server.cfc and a web.cfc that get loaded up just before everything else gets loaded up. And in that, you can actually then load any file, which is a CFconfig file, for example. There's a function to load configs. Like you can actually reload a config either in code or by putting a CFconfig JSON in the right place. I can't remember off the top of my head where it is. And that's super important from a DevOps point of view, because these are files that you like copy across all the time. These are files that you want variable replacement in, like this is a live, this is a staging, this is a QA server, etc. So this was super important for what we've been doing to have Lucee at scale.
And we just have talked about this today, that we might even support JSON 5 so that we can support comments in
comments,
JSON.
Please.
Yeah, I mean, if you, for example, convert something from the XML of Lucee 5x to 6, it will lose all the comments, right? And then if you serialize something that has comments or should have comments, you can't serialize it. The comments get all eliminated. And JSON 5 supports that. So we're working together, or at least we talked today about that. That doesn't mean we're working yet together, but we try to get CommandBox and Lucee to support JSON 5 so that we can have commented JSON structs, which will help a lot.
I mean, and CF, let's not beat around the bush. CFconfig has been an amazing tool. It brings stuff from ACF servers to Lucee servers, vice versa. It's an amazing tool. The problem that under the hood, what it's doing is creating XML that can get out of date, that goes against features in Lucee, and then it becomes a war of attrition with that we have to keep the library up to date for any new changes, and you don't want that at a configuration level. So Lucee having built in a format for its configuration in JSON, super important to me. But anyway,
I have a question actually to Ben or to Charlie. I brought up a tag that I wanted to have introduced in Lucee for about 10 years or so, and finally in Lucee 6 it made it, which is the CF timeout tag. Now the CF timeout tag is something weird. Very often we have some resources which don't respond, so you have an endless request going and going and going and going. And so you can put a CF timeout tag around it and just say, I expect you to run only 10 seconds, and then it gracefully bails out. So is that something that would be helpful to you?
Yeah, I do stuff like that, manually right now. If I have to process like several million records, I don't necessarily want to do a million records at the same time running on the same production server as users. So I'll chunk it. I'll do like, how many records can you process in 5 seconds? And then don't call this again for 60 seconds. And that gives me time to watch the CPUs on the database, watch the CPUs on the servers, and I can turn that processing on and off, usually with a feature flag, if it becomes problematic. So the idea of having that just be another thing that's easier to do in Lucee, that's just like always a value add for me.
Yeah, and I liken it to being like a try-catch. It's like the equivalent of moving error handler closer to the thing that might go wrong. You're moving the timeout capability closer to what might go long. How about that? And that's a couple of beers.
I love puns. I love puns. Yeah, that's really good.
But I want to talk about the JSON thing for a second. You were talking about that earlier. It is awesome that you can now have all the configuration in JSON, and you guys were lamenting that it's XML. But if you're in ColdFusion land, it's not only XML, it's WDDX XML.
Oh no!
Really
XML.
Fun. Oh yeah.
Isn't that Adobe proprietary?
Yeah, they created that. I remember it was a conference in 1998 at Fort Collins, Colorado. It was the first real ColdFusion conference that ever happened, and the Alera guys came and they were so excited to come out with.
Yeah, but it made
WDDX.
sense back then.
Yeah, back then. But yeah, since then, what I'm saying is that we who have to work with CFML's XML configure, ColdFusion's XML configuration, it's WDEX, which is even worse. But I will say, for those who don't know, got to represent, CF 2021 did add a CF setup tool, which is like CF config, and we can export CF admin settings as XML and can do it against any CF version. As JSON, my bad. But against any version too. You could like use the CF setup tool to export CF 10, admin settings as a JSON file, and then import those into a CF 2021. So that is pretty cool.
Okay, here comes
that's
the
only with
question.
CF. I grant.
Yeah.
CF config is awesome. That was
There you go.
Yeah, I'm not.
I wanted to say,
I'm
is it
just saying.
compatible to CF config?
And this is the sad thing about so much of this stuff is that you wonder sometimes, come on, Adobe, why don't you just get on the wagon with this thing that's already existing? They create their own things sometimes. It's too bad.
Yeah. You're finished. Yeah. That's, I don't want to.
Well, he is now that you took his.
Well, no, I
mic
didn't
away.
want to take it. I was waiting I was just saying I'm next. I mean, configs are really good, but part of 12-factor apps, go look it up, 12factor.net, which is how most cloud native apps are now. One of the things is having configuration in environment variables and have an environment variable replacements, which is part of the CF config, which is part of the new Lucee configuration management, which is super important. And it's like, it's not just about configuration files, it's about being able to have the same source code on a container, on an image, and then being able to pass new variables to it, and it behaves differently at a very fundamental level. And that's huge. That's huge. It's such a small thing, but it's massive in my opinion. Apart from like features, but
yeah.
Features. Who needs features?
Just some clarity about the environment variable substitution. Are you saying that when you load the JSON file in, you have placeholders, and if the environment variables are available, they'll.
No, so what you can do in the JSON configuration files, I guess it's curly bracket $, right?
Curly bracket M : Actually, you can do them in XML files at the moment, but yeah, the same thing in JSON files.
Yeah, and then you can. Yep. Okay, so Michaela, you should go to whose session tomorrow. He will teach us all about that. So Excellent. It is about we allow, or Lucee allows, configuring or using and replacing environment variables in the configuration files, which is really cool because very often you just don't want to change the configuration file, but you have a different environment like a QA or a dev server, staging server, production server, and they should behave differently depending. Like, for example, if you have AWS keys that you don't want to expose in any of the other environments, you just pass them in as environment variables, and they get replaced and set in the configuration.
That's genius. Just checking if any audience members have questions. If not, I'll go to another question I have.
Any questions? There is a question. Where's the microphone?
Yeah, where's that microphone?
I'll take it over since Mishy's asleep.
Hang on, there.
Mishy's had a very long day.
No, he's running. He's running.
So one thing to mention: the guy who's asking the question right now is the guy who did Firebug.
Yeah, Fire.
Thanks for the introduction. And Mark, you said we could ask everything. So I wanted to know, how long are you involved in web development? Every one of you.
Well, when I started, GIFs weren't animated. They just didn't move. I started at university, so that must have been 92.
Web development in 92?
Yeah. Yeah, Mosaic. Represent. I was doing it as part of my degree, yeah.
Yeah, I by the way, just to that, Michaela, Pavel told me that we're raffling 3 books of yours.
We are.
Correct? Okay,
Correct.
so for that, I have prepared 3 questions.
Ooh.
And given that...
What is your name? What is your favorite color?
Okay, so wait, hang on. We'll just get back to this in a second, and we'll get back to the question. As you may have noticed, the 2 elderly gentlemen have chairs with armrests, right? So the question is about what or who is older.
Ooh.
So first question.
So to answer, you have to put your arm up. Because we don't have
Yes, put your arm up, and then we'll
just
decide.
And we don't have
So-
good eyesight.
So first question. Who is older? JJ Allaire, Ben Forta, or myself?
Ooh.
Yes.
Any guesses from the audience?
Guesses? Okay, he won the first book.
What was the correct answer for the
Ben
audience at
Forta
home?
is the oldest of the 3 of us. He's 3
Really?
weeks older. Yeah, he's 3 weeks older than I am.
Wow.
And 2 years older than JJ.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, he is into blockchain.
Yes. We'll come to another question in a bit. So
Yeah.
you'll
Yes.
get the book as soon as Pavel
2
is
years.
here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we'll make sure to get you the
Good.
book.
So
All right.
get
So
back to the
how
question.
long should we just go through the rest of the panelists to answer the question from the audience? How long you've been in web development of any kind, not just ColdFusion?
What's funny, you add that clarification. So I started with ColdFusion 96, and just
Wow.
before that, in like 95, I was working on believe it or not, a mainframe that had a application development language that we were doing web development on the mainframe in 95, 96. Yeah, it's hard to believe.
I got my first summer internship the summer between 99 and 2000. And they just happened to be using ColdFusion 4.5. So that was
Wow.
my onboarding into ColdFusion. I guess I had done like a little bit of PHP and a tiny bit of AS. A tiny bit of ASP, but ColdFusion made so much more sense.
We all did PHP, just admit it. Just once.
About Perl, if you're going to use the P word, Mark.
Okay, so I'm the teenager here. I started in late 2000, believe it or not. Before ColdFusion, I knew nothing, literally nothing of the web. Just browsing, using a browser or what have you. I was a Delphi and Pascal programmer before, mainframes, Delphi, Clipper, whatever, but no web, nothing.
That was like 30 years ago.
That's like, am I the...
Wow.
Yeah, you're the senior.
Well, I'll answer the question.
Yeah. What about you? Hang on.
Yes.
Wait. What about you, Michaela?
Well, I remember setting up a Linux server so we could have a website. We hosted it ourselves and have email, but this was early 90s. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact year, but I do remember having this separate box that we'd all have to separately log into to get to our email. And we had, the website was in some ancient, I can't even remember the language it was in. This was pre-ColdFusion. It was wasn't Perl. I did do a bit of Perl. It'll come back to me later. I'll fill it in the show notes what that language was, but it was some kind of simple tag language. No, I started ColdFusion, I think in 96 or 97 with version 1.5. And I still have that T-shirt for the web server that came with the ColdFusion.
Yeah, the O'Reilly web server.
O'Reilly web server, yeah.
Yes. And it came with Starbase version control. Starbase.
Yes.
Right. No one's ever heard of it. But you will remember you ran the Maryland ColdFusion user group.
I did.
Yes.
I took it over actually from someone else. I forget his name.
That's right.
Now.
I forget his name. But that was the first ColdFusion user group I ever gave a presentation to was the Berlin ColdFusion User Group in 97. So I remember very fondly. Thank you for that.
Cool. All right. Do we have another audience question or should we proceed? Yes, we do. I see someone at the front.
That's not a microphone.
No, you can't give them a bottle of wine to answer the question. Just for audience members on listening here, although it's sometime past 1 p.m. in the United States, it's about 8:30 or later in Germany. So I don't want people listening to think that these are morning ColdFusion drinkers.
Hang on. This is coffee.
No,
this is
totally not that.
Mark, this is coffee and that's lemonade.
Lemonade. All right. With the loud bubbles.
As we're talking about old people, when did you register your first domain?
Okay, so I can tell you what my first domain was. And surprisingly, it's markdrew.com. And then I let it lapse. And ever since at least 2003, I've been trying to get it back. So I think the first time I registered my domain was around 2000.
Wow. Maybe someone in the audience has that domain, markdrew.com.
Dan, do you have that domain? Hello. Oh.
I've been sitting on it for like 20 years.
Well, I can say I've been sitting on my first domain for almost 30 years. It's and it's still out there, and it's called systemmanage.com. So if you want to have a fun trip down memory lane, look up System Manage with 1 M. And so I had come out of the mainframe world, and I'd been a system administrator. They called it system manager in that world. And so I thought, hey, that's a clever domain name, System Manage. And that's what I used to do was, that before I got into ColdFusion. I was doing that sort of system management. And it still works well. System Manage with 1 M. With what's that? Yes, the orange styling. And if you look back at archive.org, I used to have that weird sort of mirror look to the letters, that was really popular back in the early 90s. So,
our practice makes you perfect.
Yes, our practice makes you perfect. That was my tagline. Yeah. How about that? It's trademark.
It is.
I think I've been buying domain names maybe like 2 a year since like 2004. And I've done nothing with like the vast majority of them. So I think I'm
collecting them.
No, you have a good idea.
Yeah.
You're like sitting on the toilet. You're like, check it, and it's available.
No one else will ever have this idea. I must register the domain just in case.
Yeah, exactly. And then nothing. Maybe 3 of them I've actually used. Unfortunately, I have no idea. I've had bennadel.com forever, but my dad bought it for me as a birthday present. So
also very geeky.
Yeah, he's very forward thinking. It was nice.
For those who've been around a long time, you would think that the first thing you registered would have had something to do with.
I don't know, nothing.
Come on, what might it have had something to do with? Anybody old enough to remember what was very common in his code? Girls.
All good.
He's a new man.
So first domain I ever registered, I guess, were gertfranz.ch, obviously. And I was building this hotel and restaurant recommendation service in ColdFusion back then, ColdFusion 4.5. And it was good. And I was thinking that I'm going to make millions. And I said, nobody's going to give a damn about this. So, and then TripAdvisor came out and said, they stole my idea. And then anyway, they would have never made it that far. So that was the first domain I ever registered for something like $200, which was very expensive back then.
Wow.
And that was in 2000 and
was that with Network Solutions or whatever they're called?
Yeah, something like that. Yes. You had to go through .com if you wanted to register a domain. Yeah. Question from the audience.
No.
All right.
I'm just going to follow up then. I trump your 95.
Wow.
And it was free. It was free.
Well, because no one needed one.
What did you register? Microsoft.com?
I wish. No. Back then it was domain registry was run in the UK by the academic environment. And so you just had to prove some sort of association with a name. And I happened to be running a bulletin board with that name. So yeah, I got it for free. I had to send them a fax.
So following on from that for free, I paid very little for mine, but I managed to sell one for a lot of money. And do you want to know what it is? All right. So it's minky.com. So I didn't minky.com. Now, I didn't realize, because that was a word that we had between my friends of something that's bad, like, glass platform shoes, something, two left forks, there's like, that's what it was. And then a company turned up with a very heavy Yorkshire accent. If only there was someone here from Yorkshire that could actually do the accent for me. But they came up and said, like, you might not have heard of it, but your wife might have. No, sorry, your wife, stroke, or girlfriend might have. And we do a range of products for the home, which are to clean up. And we're minky.com. And how much do you want for it? And I was like, well, how much you'll give me for it? And long story short, that's how I bought my big holiday to Australia.
Nice move.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry?
Right. Is that another audience question?
Not my problem. Like they said, it was
no question.
Just the comment.
Any more questions from the audience? Yes, there is one.
While they work on that question, if you want a Yorkshire accent, that's Mike Brunt, right?
Yeah, there you go. I think he's Lancashire.
So picture Mike
Charlie.
Brunt. If you've talked to Mike, that's the sound.
Okay, question from the audience.
And David, yeah.
Right. So tabs or spaces? and for Ben, especially. What about white space?
I mean, tabs, preferably followed by about 4 or 5 returns, and you're good.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And a few comments.
The problem is that every time that I open up Mark Drew's source files, they're all full of spaces, and I go, oh. And then I said,
before Zac answers, wait for the microphone. I'd just like to make a point, and a serious point to this, because this is a kind of jokey question that happens, and it's always a different preference with the audience. So let's put it to the test, and I'll have a point to make about this. Put your arms up if you're into tabs. Okay. Put your arms up if you're into spaces. It should.
We had about 95%.
Wait, it does.
Tabs.
It does.
Please let me finish
spaces.
That. So it doesn't matter. It should be whatever you commit. It should be in the style that you want, and it should be formatted so that whatever you check out is always consistent.
Agreed.
Except, no, there's a good reason, because when Lucee compiles bytecode, if you got spaces, it gets compiled into your bytecode. So spaces, your every tab is going to be 3 characters more in your memory used on the JVM.
But this is what I mean. It's like, that's a config in my linter that when you commit your tabs and multiple carriage returns, it gets converted into 1 space or whatever. And when you pull it out, it gets converted.
Agreed. The only thing that speaks for spaces is something like Bitbucket, where you, for example, see kind of not everything lining up properly because the tabs are rendered differently.
Issue more than
so it's Bitbucket's fault, right?
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
As a DevOps engineer, yes,
it is.
Everything is Bitbucket's fault.
Yeah, it is a setting, absolutely. But to me, I always loved doing tabs because I'm just too lazy to align everything with spaces. That's me. Anyway. Any more questions? Come on, you had enough time to think.
Michaela, do you have any more questions?
I have a whole page full of questions, so worry not.
Well, the audience thinks of something else.
Yeah, while they think of ones, and I'm happy to prioritize the audience questions over my questions. I'd like to hear a bit more about the faster startup and how much memory the Lucee 6 is using, and what the engineering challenges were in that.
Hang on, we have a special guest tonight, Zac.
Ooh. special guest.
And maybe just turn it a little bit, because, the thing is, I happen to use Lucee for a week, sorry to say, but Zac knows way more about this than I do.
So let me just introduce Zac
tribes.
for the audience at home, because they may not know who the heck he is. He's I believe, the community manager and release manager for Lucee. And we did an interview.
I prefer
the triage nurse for issues. And I'll put a link in the notes. I did an interview with Zac a few months back on what was coming up in Lucee 6. So you can.
He's a Lucee community whip. That's what I like to say.
That was 1 year ago.
A year ago, really?
Yes, and I said it was coming out in August.
Yeah.
Hang on, you didn't say the year. There you go.
So, yeah, Lucee 6 is a lot of the things we cut out was, for example, Lucee's old enough that it supports Adobe Flash and Swift files. So when you deploy, it was rolling out support for Flash files and all this sort of stuff. It's so old that there is a lot of libraries in Lucee 5 which we use to actually make Java work, because Misha had to work around things which Java didn't support. So we've ripped out, I think, about 10 or 20 Java libraries out of it. We tried to shrink it down. At the same time, we upgraded all the libraries in Lucee 6. So actually the distribution got bigger. But we're going to be ripping out the Lucee dialect in 6.1. So 6 is basically get the thing out the door, because Gert would kill me. Everyone's been putting the pressure on to get this out the door. With 6.1, we've got a lot of performance improvements where we're going to use less memory. We're going to be even faster, and we're going to be better. As I did a lot of work with Mark on deployment sort of stuff. So we did all the config import work with the 538, 539, 5310. And testing this stuff is really painful. Mark and I work through stuff, and then, I feel really sorry for Misha, our lead developer, who I don't know where he is, but he should be here. We have been hassling him with bugs.
To be here.
But he's done such an amazing job. And I think Misha is the unsung hero. I'm pretty much the more public face of Lucee these days. But Misha is, the core of the project. He's the guy who started it. I don't know if people know, but Misha's background was he's a car mechanic, right?
Yeah.
And he's one of the most brilliant Java developers I've ever met.
That's true. When I met him in 2000, that's when we first met. He was a dev for 5 years or so, and before he was a car mechanic. And that's why all of his analogies are always having to do with cars.
One of the things I talked about at the keynote is what I call DX, developer experience. So a big focus for me is actually making Lucee easier to use. And I know Lucee pretty fucking good, but I get confused sometimes. And that's always, for me, a prompt of saying, okay, let's make it better. And we've been working on that. The debugging is way improved in Lucee 6. For example, it'll tell you the content type, the response code, it'll capture the exception, you can debug the threads. It's just so much easier to use. We've also added in, for example, when you deserialize JSON and it doesn't actually parse, it doesn't take syntax error anymore. It says, invalid character, semicolon, at line 44, which is a simple thing. But every time you hit that, you have to go off and say, okay, I'm going to load it up in Firefox and get the, nice JavaScript debugging from the browser. But no, we've moved it back in there. What I want to get people to also do is, we have a lot of very senior developers working with Lucee who've been around a long time. If something confuses you, hit me up. Ask, because we can make it simple. Because I want to bring more, a new generation of ColdFusion developers out there. We all love CFML. Okay, but look around this room, it's an older crowd. Okay, we have to bring new developers in.
There's a couple of. There you go. Awesome. Yeah. There's one young person here. So
yay.
Young person. Sure.
Well, on that point of bringing younger developers in, I just wanted to give a shout out to Autis with their Into the Box conference. I think they sponsored 5 students from high school or college to come to Into the Box. And I was talking to Keyshaw from Adobe, and they're going to be sponsoring, I believe, 50 students to go to CF Summit in Las Vegas. So you've heard it here first at CFCamp. That was announced on a podcast interview I did with him, but it hasn't published yet. So you're the first to know that. So great move there to get new, fresh blood into it. And maybe future CF camps can have more younger people come too. There's lots of young people in Germany. So,
well, we'll sponsor some young people next year, Mish.
Ooh.
We'll sponsor. Yeah, I will personally sponsor like 2 tickets for students.
Are you going to sell some domains to fund this, or?
Yeah, sure.
So I'm back on Lucee 6. One thing which I'd love everyone to do is we really are a community-driven project, okay? We are a very small dev team. We work really hard, but what we need at the moment is we've got the release candidate out the door. We need people to go out and test.
Yes.
So if we wanted to test how fast it starts up, what should we expect? Which was already Michaela's question.
It should just work.
No, but how fast? I mean,
how fast? Well, okay, I'll admit that Gert said that he wanted 1 second 4 years ago, but Moore's law makes it a lot easier.
Well, yeah.
But no, it should. When you do enable Lucee warm up with a Docker image, it should start in maybe half a second, depending on your platform.
Wow. Now, just explain what warm up is to people who haven't come across that before. I get intuitively what you mean.
When you install Lucee, it has to deploy. It goes and creates the server context and all the file system, because basically when we install Lucee, it's on top of Tomcat or on command box, has to expand all the files out onto the file system. Configure. And basically what enable warmup does is if you have a Docker image, you can say, okay, here's my configured Docker image, fire up, start up, and then exit. So that when you then start the Docker image, it's all pre-installed, it's on disk, it's ready to go, and just goes snap. Because on your laptop, Lucee starts really fast after you've installed it. So it's exactly the same concept of I've installed it and I boot my laptop, and your laptop starts immediately.
And then
I just wanted to follow up that in addition to your stressing people should test, one thing is that tomorrow you'll be doing a presentation on contributing. It's called Hacking Lucee, but it's about contributing and how easily people can contribute. And that's a great message to get out. And then you guys made a comment during the keynote, and it was kind of a throwaway towards the end, but it's another one worth stressing, is that, there is need of contribution. It's not something that people do, solely like as a full-time job. It's, volunteer efforts.
I get paid 1 day a week to work on Lucee.
There you go, 1 day a week.
No, a little bit more because I work at Pixel 8 and Alex supports me.
But that payment comes from people contributing, and you guys shared that if people would just contribute even several dollars a month, it's like a Netflix account. And I just wonder if there's maybe something you could come up with that would be something like something that would motivate people to say, "Hey, I want to do it."
We already give them something.
Well,
okay?
yes.
Everyone asks the question, what give people? No, fuck off. We provide a great fucking software solution.
Yeah.
And people go and spend $50,000 a year on an Adobe license to go, oh, we're going to move to Lucee because it's free. Well,
yes. But on the other hand, the thing is this also, it should make you proud to be part of something. I know it's not easy, but also when you're actually having and buying a proprietary license, then you're entitled to expect something for that money, right?
Yeah, but
but in this case, you're having
a refund.
Sorry?
At the moment, we can get everyone a full refund
if it doesn't work. Yes. Yeah. So in this case, you have an open source license, which is for free, and you make money out of it. So the only thing that we hope for in exchange is please just contribute and test. And
it's not that odd. There's a lot of software out there that I've had. PureRef is one of them. If anyone does any kind of artistic work, you've got whatever the ad software on there. Whenever you download it, it just says like, why don't you donate some money? Because like you're getting something out of this. You're either running an international company on free software, or you're doing your hobby project, you're being able to do something. maybe it's just a user interface fact of just saying, hey, how much do you want to give for this download? Right? 0? Okay. You can do 0. This is a UX issue more than anything, because it's not a guilt issue. People will go for hey, I can click download. But if you just say, would you like to contribute to the development of it? And that's not saying, okay, now you've given us money, now we have to give you hours of support and come around your house and give you a back massage. It's just I'll give
you an example. For example, you remember Log4j?
Yeah.
Okay, who's got government clients? Who's got corporate clients who turn around and said, are you Log4j free? Are you running the latest version of Log4j? We spent 3 months doing all the work. We killed ourselves getting out that door so that you could do that. And it would be really nice that we supported the project to do that. And you guys getting, if we had more support, we could have been more responsive. Okay, but there's 3 guys working on this a couple of days a week. And yeah.
Yes. So it's always not easy when you're having an open source company. It's absolutely like that. And we don't expect you to help at all. It's not important. It is helping us, and it's helping you by getting software out the door a little easier and a little faster. But it's definitely something you don't have to do. So it's all voluntary and all free. And we're just happy if you help. That's all.
And that's all I was getting at, is that, and by the way, his response to me wasn't really to me. We had dinner last night. Yeah, sure. Drinks. He's not telling me to put a coffee. But the concept is his point. And I was just trying to say that I talked to some other people today who, in hearing that discussion, I never really been motivated. I've not been shown something I should do to contribute. And some thoughts people were talking about was maybe in the admin it says something, or maybe when you download it says something, or like you said, user experience. We're just saying there may be something that could be done that could be a little more, hey, be aware. Because I've always been surprised at
every single release notes page for Lucee, which I spend.
Yeah, who reads the release notes, right?
I hope so. Exactly. I spend a couple of hours compiling them, right?
But the point of sale.
There you go. And that's all I was trying to say, is that there's opportunities, I think, or even what about Patreon? There's just something about the way Patreon works that might reach people differently. Yeah.
To carry on your idea, take it on to myself and get all the credit for us. Yeah, I will do. So, yeah. So Patreon would be a great modern way of doing it. If you're doing your release notes and all of that, you get access to early builds. This is exactly the Patreon model for all of that. Hey, you want to get access to a build a month early than anybody else? There you go. This is to Patreon subscribers, and that's on a low level. And then you can go increase all the way up to the corporate level, because then it's charged to a credit card.
And the lowest level could be nothing but the software. But people would go, oh yeah, I want to contribute. And you would think, well, they already know Open Collective. Come on, it's obvious. But I'm saying I've talked to people and it's not obvious to them.
The other classic example is it's like, I will only run stable builds in production, but I won't test the beta builds. Well, catch-22.
And that's it helps us. It helps us definitely if you test early. Okay. Good, Michaela.
Yeah, I've written a lot on this topic. A lot of my CF Alive book is around how can we help ColdFusion be more alive, and that's part of this. And so I just want to echo out, there are different ways different people contribute. Some people might do a pull request on the code. Other people, the code's a bit beyond them, but they could improve the documentation and, fix little errors and grammar mistakes or add examples. Other people, maybe they work a company that could have a support contract with the Lucee Association and contribute that way, or pay to have features added, which obviously pays, Gert and Zac and the other folks who work on the code. And then, as you were saying, let me just finish this up, Mark, and then I'll come to you. You can test out releases. And then the final thing I think that no one here mentioned is you can evangelize Lucee. Blog about it, post on your social media, tell your programming buddies, hey, there's this cool open source version of ColdFusion. Because in my experience of talking with CTOs and CIOs, a lot of them don't even know there's an open source version of ColdFusion. they're stuck in the mentality of CF9. I know Lucee existed back then, but it was a little kind of different. It was Raylo, right? Rilo, or however you pronounce it. And so just getting the word out, because so many people just have a false view of ColdFusion and Lucee and don't understand how modern a language and ecosystem it has. So, Mr. Drew, you were keen to.
Well, you had many points there, and the way I'd do is break that down by market and a number of people. Like there's only so many CTOs that you can sell to, and getting to them is very expensive, as we know by the cost of adverts in Computer Weekly and CTO Monthly or whatever the magazine they read, right? But the fact that you look at the number of downloads of Lucee, if you look how many downloads, I mean, I don't know.
I think ForgeBox has about 900,000 downloads of Lucee.
Yeah, exactly. So you got 900,000 downloads of Lucee. If you just put a small traction on that, well, ForgeBox is different because that's automated and stuff like that. But if you go to the Lucee website and say, like, here, click to download Lucee on the downloads.lucee.org website, and you do that and a pop-up comes up. Like, I don't know how many downloads we get from that, but if you had that funding, then you can do everything else. A lot of the things that you say there are what every commercial company is trying is the attention that every commercial company is trying to attract. Being able to say we have a modern version of CFML or just it's this programming language called Lucee. Doesn't matter whatever CFML is, doesn't matter. For a director to say that, it has to be driven a lot by developer buy-in. Either developer buy-in bottom up, or it's going to be top down from CTO down. CTO down is super expensive because golf courses, and our CTO is not here, but we're having a conversation the other day, is a lot of people are trying to get the CTO to get eyes on their product. Like it's expensive, and they'll spend a big amount of money. That's a very difficult thing to actually do, no matter the validity of the product. Correct? I mean, we've been in this business long enough. So the way that we can do it is bottom up. I think that's the only way to do it. If we're going to get funds from the bottom up, once you start saying it costs a little bit of money, but weirdly enough, asking for very little money gives a lot more value to the product, right? If it's just free, it's whatever. It's a click, download, doesn't matter. But saying, hey, you would like to become part of our Patreon.
Yeah. And regarding bottom up, what I have experienced over the last 20 years, yes, Lucee's 20 years old, or Rilo, is that from bottom up is way more, consistent. It lasts longer because, the developers believe in you, and eventually they will convince the managers. But anyway, since you were talking about your book before, I have another question.
Great segue there, Gert.
Yeah, there you go. For another,
you could be a TV host, I think, in a future career.
Well, I tried, but they turned me down. My accent is weird. But anyway,
but that's because it's your third language.
There you go. Nice segue there. Thank you.
What's the question to the audience to win a book?
What is older again? PHP, ColdFusion, or JavaScript?
Oh.
Okay, so we had an answer there, ColdFusion. Just asking around, who's betting for anything else? JavaScript, anyone else? Okay, Grüß, you just won a book. PHP is 4 days older than ColdFusion. So ColdFusion was published on 28th of June, 1995, and Alaire ColdFusion was published on 2nd of July, 1995. Wow. JavaScript on 3rd of December, 1995. Okay, we got the second book there. I have a third and final question, which I'll throw in a bit.
I'm just curious where ASP came in that age thing, if you happen to know.
I think it was later than that because IIS got into the game, as usual, Microsoft's a little late in the game. I guess in 97.
Did you ever hear the story? I'd heard a story that Microsoft talked to Alaire about acquiring CFML
They did,
to be what would be ASP.
They did.
Could have been CFML.
They should have.
Yeah, could have been. What might have been.
Well, but then we'd have ColdFusion.net right now, and I'm not sure that necessarily would be better.
Would you?
The audience has gone crazy for the ColdFusion.
And I'm pretty sure it wouldn't work with Mac. So, any more questions in the audience?
To be fair, Mac had Fusion Objects, which was right at the time. So I thought it was the same stuff at the time.
it was not.
I mean, it's not.
Okay, Michaela?
Yes. Let's go on. I heard there's something called single context mode in Lucee 6. And what the heck does single context even mean?
So if you've ever logged into Lucee Administrator, previously you've always had a server and a web context. Conceptually, it's a bit like CSS. So in Lucee, you have a server context, which is your base configuration. And then with the web context, that's your web configuration. So if you've got different websites, back in the day, we used to run multiple websites off one server. These days,
I mean, this was very much, so this was very geared towards ISPs. So let's go back. You have to understand that the context that where Lucee came from before thinking that we've gone back. We're going forward for a very good reason. Lucee was aimed at simplifying the life of hosting companies. So what they could say is like all for the server, you had a number of things that you could do. And then for each website, no application, you could lock it down specifically for them or do very specific settings for them. So for example, Zac's website, zac.com, the place for the bearded people, would have its own DSN, markdrew.com, whoever has that, would have a database to my blog, right? And Gert.Franz.ch would have a data source to his own thing and everything locked down because you can't trust Gert with any access to Java, right? So it means that you can separate out the configuration very nicely. This is really great apart from, as time has moved on, we now get to the point that's very valid and very useful feature, but not in all situations compared to containers, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you just said.
Yeah. So, for example, now in the modern world, we've got this idea of containers which are a single context. You only have one website in it. You're not hosting 50 websites in one container.
I think the critical thing to explain to people is, you know what an application.cfc is, what an application is in a subdirectory or the root directory of an application. So in Lucee, it's a bit like with CSS. You have the server configuration, the web configuration, the application.cfc configuration.
So the three tiers.
Yes. And now with Lucee 6, you can have two.
Right. So you have the server and the web, which ColdFusion does, but to ColdFusion's detriment, they're not very. And by the way, like Charlie's going to tell me how wrong I am. ColdFusion hasn't been like really geared towards very light containerization. I might be wrong. I'm wrong. Right?
I wanted to say this earlier, but I bit my tongue.
I just don't know.
Had my opportunity. So just to be clear, CF 2021 did reduce a core engine of 140 meg that starts up in several seconds, and with Docker image as well. The Docker images are all very small. But you're not paying attention. I understand.
Yeah, but how much does it cost per core?
Well, there is that. Well, it's free for development. But yes, it is price per core.
the thing is that the price doesn't matter because humans actually cost a lot more than software generally. Apart from Adobe CF, they probably cost more than humans. But the whole point is that like the cost, the monetary cost for that is not important. But like for example, we started up 900 containers. How much would that cost us? A
lot of money in production. Yeah,
sure, exactly. But that's regardless. The whole point for the single context is that we need to start it up. We need to have one config. Be done with it.
It's simple to understand.
Yeah.
If you're a new ColdFusion developer, you go and download Lucee 6, you install it, you have a single context. Because audience question: who is confused by the Lucee server and web admins?
Yeah. That's you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I was too when I started. I had no idea. I know it now, but yeah,
I had hair.
Well, we first met in Crown Casino in Melbourne, I think in 98.
In where?
Crown Casino at a ColdFusion conference, I think in 98 or 99. I'm not sure.
You mean DX Down Under or something, or some?
Yeah. Because I mean, this is my first ColdFusion conference since 2006.
Oh my God. What? Oh my God. You see, Lucee can't afford sending everyone. All good. Oh, please contribute. No, all good. Okay. Anyway, go ahead.
I hear that in Lucee 6, you've made some of the CFML defaults smarter. Can anyone speak to that?
Did we?
Apparently, CF location add token false is now the default, for example.
I understood we make some CF folks smarter, and I thought, what?
Well, that too, but I meant the defaults in the language.
Defaults. Thank you. And they are breaking changes. Some of those are breaking changes, but one of the things that I always hated was CF location, and you always had to do add token. Now in Lucee, you could always do that by doing something like this: .tag, .location, add token equals no in the application CFC, and that would have validated for everything, so you wouldn't have to add it anymore.
Yeah, that's an application by default. You can do overrides for any tag.
The default source. So what we do currently is that we use the default data source, but that's something that I guess ColdFusion does as well. But that is something that I always loved, that for any tag in Lucee, you can set defaults in the application CFC so that you can omit them later on, right? Like, for example, setting some server attributes for CF mail tag or for the query tag or whatever, which is really very helpful. What was the breaking change?
Okay. So anyone at home who's listening and here at the audience, we have an epic on our Jira, which lists all the breaking changes for 6, ones we've implemented and ones we want to do.
You should put that onto the README of the Patreon that we're
Okay.
On the higher tier.
So the one critical breaking change is we've changed the equality. The triple equals equality used to be comparing Java objects are identical. It's now like in JavaScript and in Adobe CF. So you say, is it the same type and the same value, not the same object? This will break a little bit of code if anyone used it. Most people got confused by it. Other stuff which we plan to change is disabling XML entities by default, because Lucee is still insecure by default. You have to go off and set this in your application.cfc. Have a look at the
Pete Freitag is going to be a lot happier.
I made Pete very happy with this. We're also looking for feedback, okay? Because CFML is actually a growing living language, and people need to talk to say, why are we doing this? Like, for example, in Lucee 6, I talk about developer experience. We've gone and, for example, get temp file. When you're working with images in ColdFusion, the image tags look at the file extension. When you get a temp file, previously it's always .temp. With Lucee 6 and I think 5.3.8 onwards, you can actually say a third file parameter to get temp file, say, I want a PNG file. And you get a temp PNG file, you can go and work with it. You know, it's a bit of boilerplate, but, you know, every time I have to go off and write that, you know, get temp file, add and PNG, do all this, delete the temp file and stuff like that, I scream. So I've gone off and changed that. It's about making these little things simpler. We were talking with Louis from Autis today about Wirebox. Now, at the moment we do create objects, we have to go and do extra work for a dependency injection. So we're looking at maybe adding in a listener for create objects, so we can do automatic dependency injection. Okay, it's so simple, but
well, it's all good. I actually had a question, Ben. What version are you on Lucee?
I think I'm on 5.4. No. I'm on like 5.3. Maybe a little bit lower. Yeah. I think the last time we upgraded was maybe a year ago. So I don't know what that was.
I mean, for somebody like InVision, it's not easy.
The problem is the number of people working on ColdFusion in my company is very small, this guy. And upgrading the Lucee language in the Docker file, it's the first line. So when I do that, everything else recompiles, and there's all kinds of other stuff that is not really my skill set. I am all about manual testing. That's correct.
But about testing the whole stack and everybody else's stack and every other.
You upgrade it and you just click around for a little while. I don't know what the big deal is. Upload some files. It works.
This is awesome.
But you were sitting in Nolan's talk today, and you were very impressed.
I'm getting closer. I'm getting closer every day.
He did a talk on testing, and it was very impressive.
File a feature request right now. So you have local mode at the function level, right? Where
the component level as well.
Oh, you have it at the component level file? Are you sure? Are you sure?
I just solved it within 5 seconds. Wow. Yes, it is available on component.
I have another.
I would like to.
Was it?
I wanted to, but we can't do it.
Okay, the feature was invalid. No fix. Sorry. Yes, well, I agree as well. So, but I'm pretty sure it's working. But hang on, I'm pretty sure it's working. There is definitely a setting in the admin where you can turn on local mode for everything.
So that's the problem. Is I'd love to turn it on, but I can't do it for the whole application because we have code that leans on the fact that setting things stores it.
Well, I hate local mode. I don't think it should be allowed in Lucee or any other language.
You said the deep, sexy voice.
Remove the local mode.
Why?
Slowly remove the local mode.
But anyway, fix this.
I want what I want is like Lucee
hang on,
to
wait,
be able to have.
I think for the audience
and const.
Mark, just for the audience, we need to explain that the local mode, if you, for example, have a CF function, you add the attribute local mode equals true. Any variable that you introduce that has not been known before will be automatically set into the local scope.
So you don't have to var them.
You don't have to var them.
Instead of saying
which
var,
is nice for very lazy developers.
And it's a safety feature.
It's a safety feature. Yeah. I agree. It's a safety feature. Oh, we have an issue. Let's just turn on local mode. Oh, the issue is gone. We have no idea why.
Yeah, tests.
But you have tests. Manual click around. What was it?
Tests don't solve this problem because it's data that's leaked out, and you
subtle bugs.
Tests. Yeah,
it's very easy.
And at least when we introduced this local mode, that was in Lucee 5 or 4.5, I don't know. It was available for components, so I don't know why it vanished. So.
Like tag islands.
Yes.
Fuck it, we do it. There are side effects. You are a developer. You decide what you do.
No, true. I agree. It is a good feature, but as far as I remember, it was still part of the component definition. But anyway, we'll figure it out and we'll let you know.
Yeah, we're going to remove it.
And let me just say that for the sake of the Adobe folks, now you can see why they can't just drop stuff. There's always these debates back and forth, and we don't ever see that within the CF Adobe community. It's all behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's all behind the scenes. It's in private forums and stuff like that, right? I have a very simple feature request. Really simple.
Okay.
And Gert might know what I'm talking about. It's a CF timer tag. I want to put that to a variable. Is it?
Solved in 5 seconds.
Is that not the main feature of Lucee 6? Wait, what did you mess around with all the others?
Not CF timeout.
No, CF timer.
Okay, good.
Hey, yeah, because before it was outputting somewhere, but I want it in a variable. I want a time.
So hang on. Okay,
now you can remove local mode.
Just for everyone that they know what it is, so you can have a tag called CF timer, open and close tag. And it just tells you if you have, for example, type equals outline, just displays a box, and whatever is in that box has taken X amount of milliseconds to
puts
execute.
It puts it somewhere silly, but you can't use it.
Yeah, well, it did that in 5.3, and then now in 6, it returns a variable.
Very good. Now that's it. Delete all your machines, upgrade to 6 now.
Yeah.
Fix request?
Next week, yeah. But
he'll trade that for.
Don't worry about local mode. Just remove it.
But I have another question for Ben. Ben, what is your favorite Lucee feature? If you think about it.
Favorite Lucee feature. Say it again. Oh, well, yeah. Well, of course. I mean, that's great. I mean, I've fallen in love with tag islands because I write script for everything except CF query, and it's lovely to be able to just dive into that. It's fantastic.
Well, Misha uses CF query, the query tag in scripts as well, and then
he does it
the
inside,
triple ticks inside.
That seems more confusing to me personally, but okay. Because then, never mind. I love that, and I love
how expensive it is.
Yeah, it's. I just love how fast it is.
Going on Patreon.
I mean, it's super fast. It's just. I don't know. ColdFusion's amazing. I don't know if it's hard to narrow it down. Yeah.
I have a question actually, which Michaela might disagree with, because to you, Ben, and you can join in, Charlie. To which level should Lucee diverge from Adobe, right? Because there is this one train of thought saying, "Oh, Lucee's open source version of ColdFusion, it should maintain compatibility," and there are some points about it, but from a free market point of view, that really stifles innovation. Like if they wanted to do something crazy, like instead of Flash, we did SVG remoting. I don't know, right? Like,
okay, I'll turn the question around. I like the idea. What do you want us to break?
What's that?
So we can diverge and we can do our own stuff, and we've been doing that for a long time. Is there stuff you'd like to break compatibility with?
The reason I'm asking to Ben and Charlie is because I don't use Adobe ColdFusion, so I don't really know what would be breaking with. But I do hear people going, "Oh, well, that will break compatibility." It's like, to me, I don't care. Like, right, I use Lucee. It's not like I'm a CFML developer and I use both. And my day-to-day is never touches Adobe.
I had a story last year about someone who picked up a ColdFusion application, which I think was 15 or 20 years old, and switched to Lucee, latest version. It just worked. So that backwards compatibility is super important. Like Eagle wanted to turn on local mode by default, right?
Well, that's one person.
No, but this is really...
it's pretty common, Mark, I would say.
Pages.
Yeah, I think
there's so much legacy ColdFusion. It's 20, how long? 25 years old?
25 years.
More. Yeah.
28 years old, and Lucee's 20 years old, or Rilo Lucee's 20 years old. I think also that the compatibility to ColdFusion is really one of the biggest selling points to Lucee. So if you turn on Lucee and you just switch your code, and you have that experience that everything just runs, that's awesome. Hang on, there's a question from the audience.
Thanks, Zac. It's not really a question, it's more a comment on what we're saying. And that is, you can have new features in Lucee that don't break compatibility with ColdFusion, Adobe ColdFusion. We can add new things. And just because Adobe doesn't support them, that doesn't mean you can't just migrate directly to Lucee. So let's have new features.
No, but that's
the new features. If they hit things, I don't know feedback, but if they hit things for queries, for example, right? If you want to do something like, simple example, CF loop should have, instead of query string, should have query object, right? CF query equals hash and then the query, right? That makes sense and that makes it consistent, right? I personally would go like, well, why is this, different to everything else, right?
Yes,
but we've just added listeners to CF query. Does Adobe ColdFusion have those?
Well, not yet, but I have a very funny anecdote, at least from my point of view. It's a funny anecdote. Misha and I were talking about the member functions 10 years ago. And we introduced those, member functions, what they do. Instead of having array append, you have array.append. And I remember Misha saying, well, let's call them member functions. And I thought, no, actually, they're type methods. So we shouldn't call them member functions because it has nothing to do with it. It's not a member. I don't see a member. So anyway, he said, okay, let's go with it. Let's release Lucee 4.5 with member functions. And then we went to the Adobe keynote somewhere. And Adobe, fortunately, adopted that concept. And they said, here are the new member functions. There goes the name, right? So I was way too late for that. So eventually, once we introduce something which is maybe smart enough, Adobe will follow us. They're definitely not forced to do so because they're doing a pretty good job. So it's more or less a game. It's kind of a ping pong game between Adobe and Lucee, where they introduce something which is nice, we introduce something which is nice, and I hope that we can bring both of the engines forward, one being open source, the other just not.
Well, I was just going to say that's what I was getting at earlier in one of my first comments is that with that keynote this morning, it really feels like this is the screw it. We're just going forward release, and I understand that. And that goes to your point. It's like you can move forward on things that seemingly can't be implemented for whatever reason. Or, as you said, you can hope that they'll see it and adopt it. And there's more of it than people may realize. Because again, if you're just wholesale Lucee, you don't pay attention, but I'm doing hidden gems in every release. And so I'm aware of what's changing. And sometimes I see things coming that are new in Lucee. And I go, CS been doing that for a while, but who cares if you're in Lucee? You don't care. You just want to know that it works in Lucee. And so there's a lot of that back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah, but there's one thing. We from Lucee hope that Adobe follows. Yeah. Adobe doesn't hope that we follow.
Oh, right. So, you mean in general? Yeah.
In general, yes.
Yeah. But it absolutely goes both ways. Yeah.
I want to shout out to Mark, who's my contemporary at Adobe, Mark Takata. We have a good working relationship and we're trying to coordinate. And we basically look at what each other's doing. We've got feedback. There's been some big changes in the Adobe team lately. They're trying to actually really improve their processes. And I look forward to a productive working relationship with both of us because I'll give you an example on Android. You have competing browser engines. A web browser on Android is great. Safari is a train wreck on iOS. We make each other better. We look at each other, what we're doing. We work, it's a bit of competition is good.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Yes. And I would also add that without talking about politics amongst friends, because no one wants that, a lot of politics, both in the UK and the US, have got this idea of, well, you got your base. They're going to vote for you, whatever, right? They're going to use Adobe. They're going to use Lucee, whatever. I'm on the Lucee team because I'm going to use Lucee, whatever. There's no swaying me because that's my career. But you have a loud, smaller minority that is using both and doing that, and they're actually quite loud compared to the different bases. There's a lot of people using Adobe CF have zero interest in Lucee. There's a lot of people using Lucee. They're just looking at what the Lucee releases are doing, right? And as in politics and as in this kind of thing, you got quite a lot of people that have got and allowed because they happen to be Ben Nadel and they are the internet. Or Charlie Arehart or somebody like, and I don't mean this in a negative way, or are just loud on the internet anyway, that are using both and are talking theoretical questions like, what should Lucee do? And like, it doesn't matter, right? Because if it does something, people will use it, right? And those are kind of a quite loud vocal minority, in my opinion.
Every time we do something, we think about compatibility and how it works.
Have a question from the audience?
Again, not so much.
We have a question from the audience.
Again, not so much a question, but another comment, because our code base is going back some 20 years. I think there's not a single line in there that's actually dating back 20 years, but it has evolved over that time. And of course, we started up with ColdFusion. We're now on Lucee. And backwards compatibility is one thing that's really has been an asset for us. But we've solved those problems, obviously, now. There shouldn't be any code base now that's still some CF8 stuff. So
if it's live code, surely,
yeah,
it didn't matter if it's a ColdFusion,
it's one aspect, but having a language that has two different kinds of perspectives as alternatives, like one very enterprisey, the Adobe way, and one completely open source. This serves a double purpose in that way that it's not only backwards compatible, not everything is compatible. There are some ideas in ColdFusion which weren't very good, CF Ajax, for example. Yeah, let's not mention
CF clients. CF clients.
We do have contact, forcibly so, because we use some third-party software that's not developed on ColdFusion, but in another language that starts with P, which we won't mention here. But and that's not in our experience. You have as a developer with limited resources, every 1-2 years we have to do some stuff to change our development based on this one, because it's not developed in an enterprisey kind of way. So they don't worry about backwards compatibility. They design their language with, well, let's do this. Let's have escape something real, string, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. And the language is a train wreck. And they see the train wreck and they say, well, let's do this better.
You're just saying Angular. You just say Angular. Right?
Angular 1 to 3, 1 to 2. Exactly my point. I'm on Vue now because of this. And I won't touch Angular any time again. So having this enterprise mindset and actually you two talking, that's really a big boon to the language itself.
That's a real big change.
So having a common base is really essential, and having the enterprise and the open source in one boat, that's really great.
Thank you very much.
I don't think any other environment has this.
What I have to say, in our community, let's be blunt and honest, is not really that big. So it would be not very beneficial if we would fight each other in this small community. I have a question to you, Michaela. Do you use Lucee?
Yes, we do. I do. Team does.
Which version?
Yeah. 5 something or another. I don't know. I don't keep track of the version numbers. And whatever the latest 5.91 is.
And how was your transition?
For Lucee or something else?
Very good.
I mean, you're very forward as an interviewer, Gert. I think you should be on TV.
Sorry, you were saying, hang on.
From ACF to Lucee?
Yes.
Well, we've done that for quite a lot of clients, and sometimes it goes straightforward. Other times they're using PDF stuff, or you have to, there's other things in there that need to be changed out for libraries. So sometimes some people write great code 20 years ago. Other people's 20-year-old code is not quite so great.
One of my biggest disappointments in Adobe buying Macromedia's ColdFusion was an amazing promise of being able to have the power of Photoshop in a scripting language, but they gave the power of PDF instead. Right?
Well,
and even though that, and by the way, this is not me just hitting on ColdFusion at all. It was like, I remember when Adobe are buying ColdFusion, it's like, great. Now we got Photoshop and scripted Photoshop, and it's like, no, you're going to get PDF.
One thing.
Well, Adobe is a very big company, and they have many products. Last time I counted, it was over 50. It's probably way more than that now. And they're like little fiefdoms. It's not like one kingdom with a king at Adobe. They've got little fiefdoms. Each product has its own little champions and what have you. It's not as rational as you might think.
I was just going to say I think most of us sort of build stuff for our own use. And it's another thing to consider people like Ortus Solutions or other people who are building community products where they can't pick and choose necessarily the type of customers that they want to work with. So for them and their business model, being able to serve the most people means having a much more compatible language. Or, they also can't introduce the cutting edge stuff that only one of the languages can take advantage of.
One of the big differences, I think, with Lucee versus Adobe is that all the core team on Lucee are all part-time Lucee developers on the core. The rest of the time, we're actually building apps on Lucee. So we're experiencing the product, we're using the product, we're dog fooding the product.
Rilo was always designed to be a language from developers for developers. It was from day one. We never, at the beginning, we all wear T-shirts. So we never wore polo shirts. So we always intended to impress the developers. Not the managers. I know that was error number one, because we would have been way more successful if we targeted the managers and not just the developers. But to us, it was just a very great experience over the last 20 years. And it paid off in the end, but still, it took a lot of perseverance. Anyway,
I was going to say that's very important to be, eating your own dog food and to have come from that environment. I want to shout out to David Tattersall here in the front row from Integral, the Fusion Reactor guys. Woo! Because they Fusion Reactor because they needed a tool. They were doing CFML apps 20 years ago and needed a better monitoring tool. There wasn't anything. So they built Fusion Reactor, and they've always had that, core understanding of we're one of you, we're building a tool to solve your problems. And so it's great. Thank you for that.
One comment I'd like to make, as we know, we run this annual ColdFusion survey, and one of the things I noticed is the adoption curve from older versions of Adobe ColdFusion and older versions of Lucee. Lucee users are much faster to go to the latest version. There's very few, maybe they're 5.8 versus 5.9, but they're not that much behind. Whereas Adobe ColdFusion, there's quite a spread out curve as to older versions.
Well, that's a simple equation, Upgrade to Lucee versus upgrade ColdFusion, the costs are more or less.
I don't think it's even cost. It's also the environment, right? So a lot of the people that are upgrading to Lucee are either non-enterprise, so the barrier to upgrade something is easier, right? That you don't have to go through compliance, you don't have to go through a whole bunch of different steps to do it. And I'm talking DistroKid as part of that. We have QA, we test a new version of Lucee and we upgrade. As an example, right? I'm just using it as an example. A company that's using ColdFusion will have to either pay for upgrades, and I don't know if you meant just minor versions which are free, those
two actually. I talk to people like they're on Adobe ColdFusion 2021 and they're on hotfix 4, and I forget how many hotfix. Charlie probably knows exactly how many hotfixes, but it's way more than 4. They just have some inertia and corporate whatever bureaucracy that gets in the way.
And I've noticed this, businesses as they get bigger, you get less empowerment to do that. Now scale that up to an enterprise, and it goes like, I've got to upgrade. Can I upgrade? Who do I have to ask about it? And the enterprise doesn't know. The enterprise does not know that answer. So therefore, but then instead of someone taking the empowerment, that smaller company go, well, then I'll do it.
So I think partly it is that enterprise slowness. I think also the fact that Lucee has been having monthly point releases for quite a while. And people just get used to there's another point release, I'm just going to install it. Whereas Adobe has been slower off the bat, though. They have moved to annual releases now.
Well, talk about that. That's new information. A lot of people haven't heard that. You shared that.
Well, there are Adobe's moved from releasing every 2 years. They're now going to an annual release plan. Kishore Balakrishna revealed that on the CF Live podcast,
which is good.
And
for some people.
well, the concern is the technology is moving so fast. I mean, I read some study that said, if you take a century of inventions from 1900 to 2000, that happened again between 2000 and 2016. Then it happened again through 2023, which I can't quite think what the doubling period is there. And it's predicted we'll get a century of technical innovation in the next 3 years.
Right. So,
and just look at the Chat GPT and all the AI stuff that's being done as an example. But that's just one example. There's many technology changes happening, and it's hard to keep up.
Well, it's not hard to keep up in the sense of IT products. The barrier to entry is cost, right? So an enterprise getting an invoice raised to, I have to go to my boss and I have to go, hi, Kevin, I want to get 50 new licenses of ColdFusion 2019. And why? Because what's the difference between 2019 and 2018 or 2023 and 2022? It doesn't really matter. That's a pricing model issue. Why don't you just have a subscription model like we have with AWS?
Well, I imagine I'm just making a guess here. It's an intelligent guess that, as you know, Adobe Creative Suite is on a subscription model. And I imagine ColdFusion may go to a subscription model at that point.
Well, and I'll say, because you mentioned that in passing while we weren't on the mic, but that Adobe does offer that. There are people that do pay for ColdFusion on a subscription basis. So it's not offered on the website as the way to buy it. But if you approach Adobe, or if they approach you, some know what I'm talking about. Then there's a subscription model option.
And, let's not forget, everyone who's sitting here at this conference and who's sitting in front of here is actually a product of what happened in 1995 when ColdFusion was kind of released. And we built Lucee because of ColdFusion. Okay, it sucked back in the days, so we had to build it. And in the meantime, we're kind of the challenging junior, challenging the senior to, catch up with us. Okay, and then we built some features.
We're the junior from 2008.
Yeah, but still. Yeah, the junior with gray hair who does say that. Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, you see how long it took us to catch up and how now we're in this kind of ping pong game with it. But actually, in the meantime, I like the way how things are because we're in a friendly relationship, in an agnostic relationship where we just respect each other and we just.
I'm going to dish the dirt, Gert. I'm going to dish the.
Okay, go ahead.
What people don't know, I'm going to dish the Gert dirt. No, what people don't know is that there were many years that people at Adobe were very combative against Rilo and Lucee. I'm not going to go more into the. Yeah, I'm very personal, and it was a very big battle. Now we've got to a situation where there's this cooperation between the two companies. We are completely different entities. I say we. I'm just a supporter of Rilo. Really, I say we. I know we. Oops.
Contributing to the wrong source code.
Can you speak on the mic?
Wonder all my PRs never get accepted. No, yeah. Well, I'm just a contributor. I'm just a supporter of Lucee per se, but I haven't seen the challenge that we used to have with Adobe. And now I think that's good because now that benefits all of you guys, right? Like you as the customers of enterprise software, you're the customers of open source software, you're all benefiting from two companies not working together, but not being antagonistic to each other, right? But it's kind of now market forces.
Well, while we're talking history, some of you will know that the history of the paved road of Adobe, of Lucee and Rilo was on a dirt road that preceded, which was Blue Dragon, which I was a party to that. Some know that I was a party to that.
That was like a lot of battles.
And I can tell you, yes, I was disinvited from Adobe Max in 2005 because I work.
No, I think they're a lot more friendly now, and they see the. I mean, really, there is a benefit having an open source version of ColdFusion, I would say.
Good. I got the final question regarding your book. We had 3 books.
Excellent. Let's get the 3rd book out there. Mitchie has got it held at the back somewhere, right?
Please, the 4 of you without me. Which was the first open source CFML engine? There you go. The Smith project. And second question. Where was it?
What's the answer on the first? I didn't get that on the audio.
We have a challenger here.
The first
Good. We have a challenger here from.
We have a challenger.
Well, Blue Dragon was built on top of something called Tag Servlet, which was originally called Tag Fusion. And as far as I know, that was the first implementation of CFML on Java. Even at the same time that
open source.
Well, that's the question. Yes, at the time they wanted to open source it, but they got acquired by New Atlanta, and it became Blue Dragon. So I'm just throwing that out.
Misunderstand the thing between open source and actually open source.
Yes. Well, but remember too that Rilo at first wasn't open source.
No, absolutely.
There you go.
Rilo was not open source, so we had commercial versions. But you're right. It was the Smith project, and where were they from? They were from where? Nope.
Florida.
Switzerland. There you go. Switzerland. Another engine. So we're outnumbered. No, actually, it's 2-2. America 2, Switzerland 2.
Why are you looking at me like an American? I'm not.
No, actually, it was Scottish, right? Blue Dragon is Scottish. Yeah. Okay. So Switzerland won. Anyway.
Congratulations on owning a new book.
So 3rd book over there. Please approach me or approach Pavel later and tell him, or tomorrow, and tell him that you want.
I think Mitchie has the books, doesn't he?
Oh, do you? Well, Pavel has. Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Thank you. So books are raffled.
Hey, that's one thing mentioning Mishi, I wanted to say, for any of you who think about coming to CFCamp, there's important distinction to note. Mishi and Misha. They're 2 different people.
One has a weird Swiss accent and the other one has a weird German accent.
But they're both awesome. Yeah.
Both great guys. Love them to bits. And actually, I know Misha a little longer than you, but you were maybe half a year late in Munich at that beer garden meeting.
Wow.
Yes.
Then there was a very good night.
I think we're coming to the end of our time here. It's getting late in Munich. You've all got an early start tomorrow to be. Is there another day 2 keynote at CFCamp?
Well, hang on. We're just in the middle of it. No, it's all good. Okay.
So any final thoughts on Lucee 6 from the panel, and any final thoughts on Lucee 6 from the audience?
So first of all, any questions before we just do our final round? Nope. Go ahead.
My final thoughts is I haven't managed to take it out for a drive yet. But I have been nagging from afar, and I'm so happy of a lot of new features I've got in there. This is a really 2023 release of a CFML engine. No, really seriously. I've had so many engines that have come out with CF Mobile, CF Ajax, stuff that's 2 years behind the curve. This is the first time that an engine's come out with now features that are now and will really change the landscape of CFML. That's my thought on this.
Mark, I want to just so everyone knows that actually there's a lot of stuff in 6, which have actually been in the earlier releases of 5.3, 8, 9, and 10. And you and I did a lot of work rubber ducking on Zoom, working out why things weren't working with config import and all that sort of stuff. And I want to give a big shout out to DistroKid for a lot of support for Lucee. I worked at DistroKid for a year and a half. Most of the core Lucee team, Gert, Misha, and they are a Lucee company, and it's great. And I think as an example, as a corporate citizen, I work for Pixel 8 now. They also, look up at the board there. You see the companies who are actually supporting Lucee. big shout out to them because they do something which, coming back to this thing about sales, Alex, who's a CEO of Pixelate, when he has a customer doing a sales call and they go like, "Oh, we use Lucee," he goes like, "Yeah, we're on the board of Lucee. We're a sponsor of Lucee. We're heavily involved in Lucee." Okay. It gives you credibility in the marketplace because, the sales process is difficult.
I'm being able to say, like, I literally own the ground that we're going to build this monument on. Like whatever the application is going to be. If you're going to build a .NET application, you're like, who owns it? Microsoft. But if you go like, I do, I own this ground.
So in answering the question, what's great about Lucee 6, I would want to ask a question. I noticed there's a camera back there. Have all these sessions been recorded? So people will soon be able to watch the keynote. Watch the keynote from this morning. It was just a bunch of amazing stuff. I couldn't possibly list what are the coolest things because there were so many cool things. You bet.
I don't really have much to add. I'm excited to try it. That's all. I do. I feel actually a little bit guilty after not contributing in a proactive way. So I follow up the end of the parade, picking up everything off the floor and using it. So
yeah, you need a couple of more. You need a couple of more SEO hits on your blog post. No, as if you don't have enough already. Well, how did you pay the flight? Hang on, there's a question. Do we have a microphone for the back?
This is very quick, and I apologize. I know you guys are wrapping up, but Ben, I would actually change your perception of what you just said. They may be doing the parade, and you feel that you're sweeping the streets, but you're the one that's helping 1 million people behind you follow the parade.
Thank you.
So please don't sell yourself short. You are an essential part of this community.
Thank you. That's very nice.
You know what Lewis is in regards to documentation? It's Ben in terms of SEO. Yes. So regarding Lucee 6, I'm really very excited about it. As I said, first of all, because it's here. That's the first thing. And second of all, because it's so fast and it has the single mode, which is really very impressive. And it has 2 tags that I actually wanted, which is really good as well. And I'm looking a lot forward to 6.1, which is hopefully filling up the gap as well with ColdFusion. We'll see.
20% performance improvements.
20% performance improvements, some faster startup, which is already below a second. And so let's hope for it in the fall. And Lucee 6 is going to hit the market, I suppose, in 2 weeks or so. Right? Okay. So anyway, last words, you, Zac.
I just want to say I love CFML, and this is my first ColdFusion conference in 17 years. Thank you. My math's a bit slow. And it's really great to actually meet all these people. It's put faces to names, and yeah. And I can't wait for the next CFCamp. Thank you, Mishi.
Yes, big hand to Mishi for organizing this. Well, thank you, everyone on the panel, Mark, Charlie, Ben, Gert, and Zac, who zapped into the panel. And thank you, audience, for staying up so late in CFCamp.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your contributions.
Cheers.
So,
Cheers.
All right. Thank you.
Get detailed show notes on today's episode in your free CF Alive Modern ColdFusion Guide at teratech.com. That is teratech.com. Viva la CF Alive Revolution!